In a devastating weekend in California, the deadly mass shooting on what should have been the most joyful day of the year for the Asian American community. We're joined now by Dr. Jen Ashton in Los Angeles and ABC's Juju Chang on the scene of that deadly shooting. Good afternoon, Juju.
Good morning to you guys. DeMarco and Rhiannon, it's, yet another mass shooting in yet another shattered community. Monterey Park, at least 10 people dead, 10 more shot and injured, right in the middle of celebrating Lunar New Year in a city that is 65% Asian American. The annual celebration taking such a tragic turn at this dance hall. The growing memorial outside the main entrance, as you can see, where the violence broke out on Saturday night. It was about 10:22 p.m., about 100 dancers inside, according to one of the witnesses we spoke to. Somewhat more women than men, mostly in their 50s and older, mostly immigrants from China. Of course, SWAT teams converging around that white van that you see miles away in Torrance. Police say suspected gunman, 72-year-old Hu Can Tran, found inside with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And of course, that second incident at a different dance studio in Alhambra, the 26-year-old hero wrestling the gun away from the shooter, making him flee the scene.
Overnight, law enforcement searching the suspect's home. They say he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound inside this white van, hours after shooting and killing 10 people and injuring 10 more at the Star Ballroom Dance Studio during a Lunar New Year celebration in Monterey Park at 10:22 p.m. Saturday night.
You have 10 unresponsive inside, and you have 2 that are still in critical condition and breathing.
The near 2-hour standoff happening about 30 miles from where the gunman first opened fire. SWAT teams surrounding this white van. The suspect barricaded inside the vehicle, which had a stolen license plate. This morning, we're hearing from the survivors. This woman says her dance partner was fatally shot as she shielded her amid the shooting.
After the suspect do the shooting finished, he left. And then I called my partner, wake up, he don't wake up. And I realized all my hands are blood. I thought I got shot too, you understand?
About 20 minutes after the shooting, authorities say the suspect entered a second dance hall in Alhambra. These exclusive surveillance images obtained by ABC News show the suspect armed with a semi-automatic assault pistol, confronted by 26-year-old Brandon Say, wrestling the firearm away from the gunman before he could injure anyone else.
When I turned around and saw that there was an Asian man holding a gun, my first thoughts was I was going to die here. This was it. When I got the courage, I lunged at him with both my hands, grabbed the weapon, and we had a struggle. We struggled into the lobby, trying to get this gun away from each other. He was hitting me across the face, bashing the back of my head.
And we're going to go now to Dr. Jen Ashton, who, of course, Dr. Jen, you and I have talked over the years about these kinds of tragedies and the impacts that they have on these communities, not just their victims and their families, but the communities as a whole. Jen?
Yeah, Juju, and I think it's so important when we hear this story after story after story is it's not just what's happening right now, it's really the ripple effect. So if we look at this from a 360-degree perspective, if you will, first, of course, the physical effects. We know that the survivors of gunshots and gun violence suffer long-term disability oftentimes. There, of course, can be tragically paralysis from injury to the brain or spinal cord. Then there's the emotional and psychological impacts, PTSD of the people directly involved, but also all of us. And that could include memory loss due to trauma, varying degrees of severity. Then there's the impact on the community. And this is something we can all feel no matter how close or far away we are from these, affecting feelings of safety and security and literally impacting everyday choices and decisions that we make into how we live our life. And then medical costs, productivity, firearm violence is costing this country tens of billions of dollars every single year. So again, when we hear these headlines, one after the other, we have to understand just how many people are impacted.
You're absolutely right, Jen. So many ripple effects that are devastating, and yet we can't be numb to these shootings as we were talking about here on the scene. Your insights, Dr. Jen, always so helpful. We're going to go back now to Rhiannon and DeMarco in New York.
And Juju,
Guys,
before you go, thank you so much for that reporting there. I want to ask you about the man being held a hero. Law enforcement saying Brandon Say prevented yet another tragedy by wrestling the gun away from the shooter. What more do we know about how he was able to disarm the suspect?
It's an absolutely incredible story, DeMarco. He's 26-year-old. You see these images. He told us he was wrapping up around 10:30. He spotted the gunman at the Lili studio. He thought to himself, I'm going to die. You heard him say that. Somehow he manages to summon up the courage, grab the gun with both hands. You see them wrestling there. He said he got hit in the face. He woke up with bruises all over his body. He's been shaking all night. And he talked about how courage is not the absence of fear, but the way to overcome it and fight back. And he said he wanted the final messages to be for the victims who suffered inside that dance hall that you see right behind me.
Just incredible looking at those images, Juju. And you mentioned that this community is 65% Asian American, and investigators are, of course, still trying to piece together what could drive a 72-year-old man to turn on his own community. Is there any possible word of a motive yet this morning?
It's a great question, Rhiannon, and it's one that investigators are pouring all over. I will tell you, we usually think of mass shooters as young men. He's a 72-year-old Asian American man. And what we do know, we've spoken to Congressman Juju Chang, who's a former mayor here, and she's been in touch with investigators and with domestic violence folks. She says that their investigators are looking at everything from mental health to domestic violence. But she says despite whatever the motive is, this is a community that is in shock and is mourning, and especially poignant because of the fact that it's the Lunar New Year. This is the height of celebration. Literally, there was a party going on inside. There had been a parade just on the other side of this building with thousands of families and children. This is a day of celebration where, you know, Asian Americans like us, we dress up in traditional costumes. We eat traditional food, noodles and dumplings, and it's a day of rejoicing and joyfulness, and to have it end in this horribly tragic way, it's just devastating.
A day of celebration turning tragic. Juju, thank you so much for following this story for us today.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.